All right, guys, welcome back. Today's topic is air ambulance operations. And everybody all gets excited about a helicopter, that's for sure. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that you should and, more importantly, should not do around the aircraft and things you need to know and understand about using air medical transport. But when we're talking about air medical transport, we're talking about helicopters and airplane, fixed-winged aircraft, okay? And it's vital that you understand that, because we also do transportation via ground to and assist flight crews in loading, disembarking, transportation services. And so when you go, and again, in a critical situation, again, the rotor wing aircraft is what we usually use to transport the patients off the scene. Again, air medical crew, they usually are not the primary is the air medical crew is first on scene. Secondary is they're summoned by ground personnel. The model in EMS today is that the ground crews will get there and go, no, this is something that's more important, and we need to go ahead and fly this person. Now, there are some dumb exceptions to that, but for the most part, now I will tell you that usually interfacility transfers, and again, that's where they usually call in the aircraft to take them from a primary care area to a secondary or tertiary care area to a higher level of care. And the type of aircraft used is actually based upon what the aircraft can do and or how far away it is. I know that Shandscare 1, which is an Augusta 130, is a 135, can actually fly to Atlanta and then come back. But that's kind of the extent of its range. But the smaller aircraft actually they have a limited amount that they can go, so that so I would say probably 200 miles if I had to make a bet about what the generalized, and that's to and back, okay? And definitely the pilot will let you know if they can and cannot do that, okay? So again, and I will tell you that lately there's been a huge, what I call the aircraft chess match, because they constantly move aircraft around for better deployment. Remember that these guys are in the business, they are in the business to help people, but they're also in the business to make money. And an aircraft ride is around $48,000 as of the taping of this video. So it is extremely expensive. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of using an aircraft with this. So specialty care, by the way, is they bring in specialty teams, neonatal transports. Yes, the Shandscare aircraft actually do go pick up the neonatal team and fly them to certain locations. Again, and organ procurement teams actually use these, and I will tell you that most of the time your organ procurement guys are usually on a fixed wing aircraft. And we did a lot of fixed wing. I know at Shandscare we would go to the airport, pick them up, and transport them there. So again, it was a very common thing for us to do at Shandscare, for the ground team part of it was. So I understand that they are sometimes used in search and rescue operations, and again, they use higher technology things. Most every one of them has infrared goggles, night vision goggles. Most every aircraft I know of has some sort of high intensity spotlight where they can actually, literally they could burn the grass on the ground with that. So again, this is kind of the example, again, using night vision goggles. Pretty much everybody that I know all of our Shandscare guys had it. And pretty much every aircraft does, which is why you don't ever shine your lights up at when they're trying to land at night. Don't ever shine your lights up. Matter of fact, shining your lights up is actually with those lights on, with the night vision goggles on, can be extremely dangerous to the crew. Again, we can use it in disaster situation, MCI situations. But remember that there is a limited number of these guys around, so use them wisely, because if they're on your flight that's it could have went by ground, and then somebody really does need it, and they're 200 miles, they're an hour and 40 minutes by ground versus 20 minutes by air. And yes, there are situations where that happens, okay? So I think that you have to have absolute judicious use of your aircraft, okay? Now, EMS providers should be familiar with your local area. I will tell you that we are basically surrounded by aircraft. St. Augustine has one. Jacksonville has two. Shandscare, again, has a base in the South Marion County. They have a base in Gainesville. They have a base in Lake City. They're moving the one from Panama City in a little bit farther. They have one in Pensacola. But again, you got to know where the aircraft are located at. South of us, Aeromed has several helicopters. Leesburg has one. I think they've got one in Bunnell, in that general area. So like I said, there's a little bit of a chess match going on with the aircraft providers. EMS personnel should be familiar with the local capabilities and protocol for uses. Pretty much, I can tell you that your aircraft medics are usually, in the common configuration here is your flight nurse and then a flight paramedic, and usually they're a critical care paramedic, or usually a very experienced paramedic. But they have an advanced level of training. And again, I can tell you from our perspective, when we received our training, that we were allowed to do a lot more things than the standard quote unquote ground medic was allowed to do. Actually, the air medical transport industry kind of started out with, of course, military uses. The World War I used it. The French and the British were flying people out in the 1920s. Again, Sikorsky got the first operational helicopter in 1942, and the first documented medical evac via the jungles of Burma. In 1950s, it was commonly used in medical infantry cases, and these were the ones that, like on MASH, that were hanging off the side of the two rails. And literally, when we say transport, they were put on a helicopter on the wing, on the skids of the helicopter on the outside, and flown to a MASH hospital. Okay, and in 1960s they got more powerful, and then we were using them in Vietnam to again medevac, not only troop transport but medevac your wounded out. And again, the helicopter, again, the dust off heavily used in Vietnam. In Australia, they actually started the Royal Flying Doctor Service out there. So in other parts of the world, by the way, I will tell you that the standard configuration for aircraft is a physician and some sort of nurse. Okay, so they usually have some sort of advanced level provider there. And again, a lot of history involved with these. You can take a look at these in your book. So again, fixed wing aircraft, it has a significant more range. We can fly somebody from Gainesville to Miami in about 45 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour, depending on weather. But again, a ground transport from Gainesville to Miami is around 5.5, 6 hours, and that's booking it. Okay, aircraft, rotor wing aircraft, again, can get into harder to reach areas. It's very good for scene flights. Fixed wing aircraft, we can't usually use for scene flights. Usually your fixed wing aircraft aren't set up for emergency level operations. Okay. Again, your airplanes or your fixed wing aircraft, again, they got greater speed, greater range, greater distance. Problem is that they don't have, it requires somebody to bring them the patient. Okay, you can't just land the aircraft at the hospital and then take them. So again, most fixed air ambulances are turbine powered, by the way, and most of them nowadays have the 2-engine configuration at a bare minimum. We used a lot of the Learjets with Shandscare, the Learjet, and I will tell you that it's very cramped in those areas. Tending patients in there, you would think that you'd have, we're going to put them on a big 727. That's not actually what a lot of the air transport services use. They are a little bit larger. You got a little bit more room than you do in a helicopter. Again, with Shands, I know that we were kind of spoiled. The Augusta is kind of a big aircraft, but even then there was limited space inside of it, and especially the smaller copters. The 407s that they're using, 403s, 407s that they use. Again, there's very little room at all in those things to do any type of procedures, which is why a lot of your air crews will do things in the back of your truck before they move the patient to the aircraft and get them flying. Okay. And again, the problem with the fixed wing aircraft is it usually requires a ground transport crew to take them there. Most of the time, again, it depends on the configuration. I know the Learjets, we filled them from the front. But again, this turboprop plane, we probably fill it from the back here. Now your rotor wings, again, helicopters. Again, these are the ones that they're powered by usually one single turbine jet engine. Yeah, get that one into your head. There's a lot of aircraft that wanted the 2-engine configuration. That way, if you had one engine fail, that you would have another engine where you could at least get it on the ground and safely call for assistance. But a lot of the aircraft are actually single turbine. Kind of, again, and I will tell you, by the way, when your ambulance breaks down, you pull off the side of the road. When your aircraft breaks down, you get to auto rotate to the ground, maybe. So, again, they usually fly under visual flight rules, which means they have to be able to see with a certain amount of space. So that's why when you hear the patient, you got a foggy area, even if they're flying under instrument flight rules means that they fly to a designated spot using beacons and tower locations, and yes, they can do that. A matter of fact, Shanskare 1 is probably one of the only aircraft in the area that can do it. But remember, it requires a certain amount of visual in order to land the aircraft. So if it's foggy out, I'm going to tell you right now, they're not going to get any air, okay? They're just not going to do it. And then most of your programs, by the way, for rotor wing are under visual flight rules, okay? So just be aware of that. If you've got bad weather, don't bother, okay? Simply putting it, don't bother with an aircraft. You're not going to get it. Okay. So again, the weather conditions have to be safe. Matter of fact, I know that in the programs that I've seen, the rule is 3 to say go, 1 to say no. The 3 being the pilot, the nurse, and if any one of them say, you know what, I'm just not comfortable, that's it. The flight's off. Okay. Period. It takes all 3 of them to say, yes, we'll accept the flight. All right. And again, this varies by terrain, lighting, day or night. Remember, Florida, we're blessed with a pretty much flat land, okay? So we can pretty much see. But remember, let's say talk about California or you got a mountainous area, North Carolina. That's where aircraft operations becomes a whole lot trickier because, again, you got that mountain element, and they've got to be able to see. And then programs capable of trained under instrument flight rules do have significant limitations, by the way. They can only usually fly to a certain spot. Again, there has to be an approved IFR location, like airports or designated landing zones with IFR capability with it. Now, again, the biggest thing, the good news is about if you are flying RFI, you can kind of fly in bad weather conditions, sort of, kind of, is just you have to be able to land the aircraft under visual flight rules. And usually they're going to probably say to you, more than likely no, because again, they have to have a certain amount of visibility in order to land the craft. So it's best to call through channels and make your request for a rotor wing aircraft. I know that if you call Shanskare, I can only tell you from that, if you call that, they will send the closest helicopter. It doesn't necessarily be a Shanskare helicopter. Okay, so I know that many of the dispatch centers have that same rule in it. It's whichever helicopter is closest is the one that goes, even though it's quote-unquote not our helicopter. Okay, now it allows the pilot to evaluate the situation. So when they say, yeah, we get up in 4 minutes, I can speak from very personal experience here, guys. From the time a request comes into dispatch till the time the team is alerted, that's actually pretty quick. The second that they know they have a possible flight and they know where, they immediately alert the team so that the pilot can make the decision on whether or not it's going to be okay to go. They will do the weather check. Usually your crew aboard the aircraft start getting the aircraft ready. In certain cases, we have to pull the aircraft out of the hangar. Again, you have to disconnect. You have to make sure all the safeties are off. You have to do your pre-flight checks. Personal experience here. It's about 7 minutes to get them off the ground. Okay. So by the time you alert until they're turning rotors to get off the ground is about 7 minutes. Okay. So the earlier that you can alert them, in other words, if you think you're going to something that's significant, let them know so that they can get all of that stuff done. So all they have to do when you say go is flip the switch, turn the rotors. Even that process is about 3 minutes. Okay. They might tell you, no, it's faster than that. It's about 3 minutes. Okay. And again, it's a safety issue. You don't put the thing in the air unless everything, again, warning light goes off. That's it. You don't fly the aircraft. It's that simple. Again, helicopters as air ambulances are not limited to airports. That's the good news. You can do scene flights, but there are inherent dangers to doing a scene flight. Okay, usually most counties, most places have designated landing zones. So you may only have to transport the person by ground maybe 1 or 2 miles before you go into that specific landing zone and then have the aircraft take them from there. And that's what the most models is for most counties in this area. Again, doing a scene flight, to be blunt, and by the way, don't ever forget that you can also have them meet you on the way. So if they've got a 25-minute flight and you can take 5 minutes off of that trip by going, let's say you're in the south end of Marion County, past Bellevue, but you want to meet them at the sheriff's substation where they have a beautifully lit landing pad where they know where to come in. They're able to easily get in there. They know where the wires are. Everything's set up. Transport there so that it takes the time off of your transferring the patient and it reduces the time. The ultimate goal here, guys, is to get the patient to the highest level of care as fast as possible. Okay? By the way, remember, and we'll talk about this when we get to actually using a helicopter, the transfer time is at best 10 minutes. Okay? By the time they go in, they do their assessment, they see what they need. If they have to do an airway procedure, tack on another 5 minutes to that, okay? If they're doing an RSI, a minimum of another 5 minutes, okay? Start doing the math in your head. Am I going to save time by putting them in an aircraft, or am I going to save time by just ground pounding them to the closest, the appropriate facility? Okay. And you really do need to start really thinking about that. And you should probably kind of do that a little exercise in your mind about general areas of your county. Okay. It's not just so you can offload a patient so you can go back to the station. All right. That if you're doing that, that's bad medicine. Okay. And you should not be doing that, by the way. You absolutely should not. You should do what is best for your patient. So again, I will tell you, by the way, a level 1 trauma center is required to have aircraft capability. So that's why, we have a Shands Care. Arnold Palmer has Air Care down in Orlando. Tampa General has Life Flight. So you've got these programs that they're required to actually have a helicopter as part of their program. Okay. Remember, patients with a traumatic cardiac arrest have a generally poor prognosis. And usually if they already have arrested on you, the helicopter crew is not going to put them in the aircraft, okay? So if you have a trauma arrest and you're calling for a helicopter, you're going to be very upset at the results of that because, again, they're not going to put them in the aircraft. Guys, they don't have enough room to actually do compressions in the back of the aircraft. The space is just absolutely unlimited as far as they only have a finite amount of space. And doing compressions in an aircraft, I assure you, is not something you need to be doing, okay? So they were probably going to, if the patient is that bad, they're probably going to say, look, we'll help you, we'll transport them to the local hospital, but we're not going to put them in the aircraft. And I've actually seen doctors lose their mind at the smaller facilities because the helicopter wouldn't take them. But again, they were in an arrest situation, okay? So again, what's the benefit of using an air medical transport? Speed and decreasing the time to get to the hospital, usually, okay? Again, got to do that math. And guys, I will tell you this. I've actually driven from an area in the western part of Putnam County. I drove to the hospital. They flew to the hospital, okay? They were landing as I took off to Gainesville to Shands, okay? Guys, I got there 5 minutes after the helicopter did, okay? So we only saved 5 minutes worth of time. Now, I'm not saying that that's not important. By the way, we had multiple patients, but again, stop and think about that. Are you saving a vast amount of time that's going to truly improve your patient outcome versus putting patient in back of the truck and beating feet? One other little caveat to that. every now and then you're going to get air crews that just kind of go, yeah, we're not going to take the flight. Or they're going to get halfway there and they go, yeah, we have to abort due to weather. And this was a very common thing that was happening to me in the field over in Putnam. And this is my very polite way of me of saying this. When in doubt, the rubber on the road, it always works, and you can get back up. And again, when in doubt, lay rubber, go. Okay. The problem with your air transport service, remember I said it's about $48,000 for a flight. It is truly inexpensive. Do we save the patient a lot of money to save 5 minutes? And again, if you're going to live because of that, you can say, yeah, absolutely. But I think that it is very expensive. So think about, again, if we're saving 30, 40 minutes on this patient's transport, completely different story. If we're saving 2 minutes, I'm not quite sure that we can justify that $48,000, to the patient. Again, simply by, could we have gone by ground and gotten there just as fast? All right. Remember that the aircraft has small limitations. They can't carry really big people. Okay. 350 is about the limit on your smaller aircraft. The Augusta can take a little bit heavier patient. But again, especially during the summertime when it requires more fuel and lift in order to get the helicopter off because of the weather, the actual physical air current problems, they have to actually dump fuel in order to carry. So they have to actually carry lighter weight in order to, and again, by the way, traction splints, I can tell you right now, usually don't fit in the helicopter. Okay. Especially if it's a hair traction. Sagers usually do pretty good, but the hair traction, forget it. You're probably not going to get it in the aircraft. All right. So again, your staffing for that is usually one pilot and then the 2 medical providers. And again, we kind of talked about that already. And again, the physician nurse staffing model is very common outside the United States. Okay. Unfortunately, we are having more crashes. Again, the more you use it, the more crashes. But I will tell you, in comparison, aircraft are extremely safe, and we have rules about whether or not we're going or not going. And I will also tell you that the aircraft industry is extremely safety conscious. Okay. But there's been a significant rise in the accident and fatality rates. Okay. So just be aware of that. But a lot of programs nowadays have very strict and safety protocols. They're not going to go unless it is safe to do so. And let's see here, all these lovely controversies. One note of this slide, FAA regulates the operation of air ambulances. They have exclusive authority on their regulation. Now, we do fall under Department of Health as far as the medical side of it, but who's in charge is that. By the way, also on that crew, the pilot is technically in charge. So if the pilot says no, that's the end of the conversation, okay? The pilot, the captain of the aircraft, is the one who decides what you will and won't be doing, okay? I will tell you, actually, in 9/11, one of the weird things that happened is about 4 days after they finally allowed aircraft in the air, you actually had to call Air Command, NORAD, and get permission to fly the helicopter. We had it, and I actually made that phone call, got to speak to one of the generals out there, and he says, "Nope, son, I'm not authorizing it." And I go, "Look, they got about an hour transport," and the guy goes, "Well, you better get hurrying then." And I thought it was kind of callous at the time, but again, the military at the time had grounded all aircraft, and that's the way it was. Okay. And so when I called to the crew, they're like, "We really need an aircraft." And I was like, "That's nice. You're not getting one." So, keep that in mind. When you're setting up a scene, again, try to GPS it if you can all possibly do it. Latin lawn is a wonderful thing. Most cell phones will do Latin lawn if you ask it to. Okay, most of your mapping programs will. Give closest cross street or road, city or town, well-known landmarks. They definitely help. It helps them. When you request an aircraft, you want to let them know what radio frequency you're going to be contacting them on. Okay, a backup cell phone number at the location if possible. You need to let them know about the weather conditions there, the presence of any hazardous materials or wire hazards, your power lines, trees, as they're landing. And the aircraft is going to need to talk to you to make sure about that as they approach, okay? As they come on the final, by the way, they go radio silent. So even if you try to contact them, no, it's not going to work, because the last 3 minutes of the flight, roughly, they do go radio silent, and it's only inside the aircraft where they can talk to each other, because the landing is probably the most dangerous part of that operation, okay? You usually have a landing zone officer that you need to designate one, and they report they coordinate with incident command on that, with everything having to do with the aircraft landing zone, okay? Set up your site. 50 by 50 during the day is the absolute smallest, but usually, guys, is 100 feet by 100 feet. No slope to that. Remember, if there's slope, the rotors are going to be tilted down, and the next thing you know, you got rotors that are going to chop somebody's head off. Clearly visible debris or obstructions, you need to make sure that those areas, and don't shine lights up at power lines. Just don't do it. Believe me, with the night vision goggles, guys, they can see these power lines, okay? If the area is dusty, consider wetting the area down with a fog pattern before the people land. Never have a charged fire hose pointing at the aircraft. Again, if it catches on fire, we'll take care of it then. But again, charged hose line's great. Have it over there ready to go. Approach and landing, mark the wind as practical. And we usually do this with I'm going to show the little landing zone beacon thing here. But again, we usually put some sort of marker at wherever the wind is coming out of. And they usually land into the wind, by the way. That's kind of a standard. Again, your loading area is usually to the side of the aircraft. Some of them are backloaders. Here's the deal where you don't want to be. Absolutely 100% do not want to be back here. If you enjoy your life, you don't want to be back here. Yes, you can get sucked into this. Yes, it will cut everything. Yes, it will destroy the aircraft. Yes, it will cause problems. So stay away. And by the way, most of the pilots nowadays will actually get out while you're doing a load or unload operation. Kind of depends on the aircraft company. But if you're going for this area, they will tackle you. Okay, they will absolutely knock you down. All right, so it's very important to understand that. Make sure that you turn your lights off. Turn off your flashing white lights. The red lights are okay. They usually handle those pretty good. Don't shine lights or lasers up. Please don't do that. That is extremely dangerous. Check for your hazards, obstructions, your terrain, any surfaces. Make sure all the animals are secured. If Betsy brings over her little chihuahua to see the helicopter land, you need to keep them back at least 1,000 foot. Otherwise, you're going to have chopped up chihuahua, okay? That goes for all animals, all dogs, okay? And again, your LZ makes contact with the pilot. They make sure that they have everything. And remember, although you can see the aircraft, it might not be able to see you. So keep that in mind as you're going through. Make sure that they have a good. If the landing zone does become unsafe, you need to notify them via abort landing, okay? Never try to go out if you're going to go out into the area, just start and wave your hands like so. This is called a wave off, okay? But you don't want to go where the helicopter is landing, okay? You just, again, you make a lot of noise. You go frantic, but that's again, get on the radio and say abort landing, abort landing. And if you do that, again, they're going to abort. They're going to go back up. They're going to circle, okay? And yes, dumb stuff happens, so be ready to do that. All right, the pilot, it kind of depends on the aircraft or the aircraft company as whether they do that, whether they actually get out, okay? Follow the aircraft crew's direction, okay? They're going to assign certain people to go up to the aircraft. Again, limit the 2 or 3 people from the scene, whatever they need as far as help. Again, if the aircraft's you need to approach from the downhill side. Walk away from the aircraft in the same direction. Whatever you came in, you go out that same way. Period. Okay? And let the crew direct you. By the way, you cannot hear anything when you get up there. Okay? Hand signals. Already coordinate that before you get up there about what they want you to do, okay? Again, you can't hear. I assure you, when you get underneath that helicopter, you cannot hear. Okay. So again, your patient handoff, do not bring it to the helicopter. The crew will come to you. Usually you take your stretcher out, you load it onto their stretcher, and then they take that stretcher to the aircraft, okay? And then brief, concise report, give them the paperwork that you do have, a copy of the patient's ID, vital signs, anything else, any of the physiologic data. Again, anything that you can give them is obviously very helpful. And again, make sure that you follow the safety rules. Do not go to the back of the aircraft. Do not go to the back of the aircraft. Don't go in close anywhere to turning rotors, especially that are at ground level. Okay. Fixed wing aircraft, by the way, we usually load them with the power off. The hot rotor wings is where we do the where we will do a hot load. That's with your rotors turning. Okay. It's critically important to avoid the tailcraft, and ambulances should park no closer than 25 feet to the aircraft. Go back to that 100-foot thing. Okay. By the way, what happens if the aircraft doesn't has a problem during landing? Yeah, you want to be at least 100 foot back, okay? So usually this is a side load helicopter. Again, follow the crew's directions. This is one of the tail load, and most of the time we try to load these guys with, we actually try to load these guys while they're not, it's usually a cold load as we try to do. If you're doing a scene flight here, you really need to pay attention. Usually your crew is going to be back here so that you guys don't go all the way back towards it. Never go past where that tail rotor is. Okay. That the tail rotor, I'm telling you, it'll make your day really bad. Okay. Make sure that the pilot knows if they came in and they didn't see a hazard, make sure that the pilot is aware of it. Definitely make sure the crew is aware of it, and remain in contact in the aircraft until they clear the area. While the aircraft is on the ground, gang, usually your dispatch centers can't make contact with them. They can't make contact until they get up into the air usually. So if they do call you and say, hey, is Shanskare 3 okay? And then you can advise them. Their dispatch, by the way, monitors them in flight every 5 minutes. I will tell you, they have to do a status check on them. They have the number of souls on board, and souls meaning the people that are alive. Okay. The number, again, the airspeed, the direction that they're traveling, that's all part of the flight monitoring of these aircraft. Okay. So there's a lot to take in with the aircraft operations. And again, it's always exciting to get to do a few of them. I hate to say it, it still is exciting every chance you got to do it and I was there at a base, but it was still exciting to be a part of that. But again, it's a tool like everything else is, and you need to use that tool judiciously. And like I said, it's all about what's going to get the patient to the hospital the fastest. Okay. And that sometimes that may mean if it's a tie, again, rubber meeting the road usually always wins. Okay. So keep that in mind before you snap them with a $48,000 bill. Okay. That's it for this, and I will see you guys on the next one.